What is the market telling me this week? This is the Nick Rutherford Report, and the market is either going to take advantage of you or you are going to take advantage of it. So hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, share this with someone who would get a lot out of it, because this is the place to be for the financial news that matters for your net worth. Let's get to it. There seems to be a lot of froth in the financial markets this week. So I'm pointing out this news article where Nvidia has topped $3 trillion in market cap, making it the world's most valuable company. Why am I pointing this out? Because as a new company becomes the most valuable company, so many ETFs that are out there, think about it, everyone who is investing, who's younger, maybe below 50, or who has listened to years and years of just index funding advice, they're all invested in index funds that now have to allocate more money to Nvidia. Now, of course, I know Nvidia is down today, but eventually maybe it will be up if the AI trend continues. My only point is this is something that I'm watching because of the flows. And as long as the AI craze, or maybe it's not a craze, we'll see, as long as the infrastructure is getting built, as long as more people are buying those chips and building those data centers to make the AI brain, more and more earnings are going to go to Nvidia, and this rally may continue. Now, of course, we'll have to see what happens when the earnings come out, but my only purpose of pointing this out is that things are getting bigger and frothier, and the trend seems to be continuing. So, what else is in the news? Well, this was in the news because the market is either going to take advantage of you or you're going to take advantage of the market. And U.S. housing starts and building permits plunged to lockdown lows. Why am I pointing this out? Because the mainstream media wants you to freak out. Wall Street wants you to freak out and do the wrong thing at the wrong time. So we're going to look at what the market is really telling us. So there's an interesting chart here because if you look at this chart, the building permits chart, so this was within that article about the starts. Well, if you look at it, we're just down back to the average between, say, 2015 and 2019. So if we come off the crazy highs and we're just back to the average of how it was, it's really not time to freak out. And don't worry, when it's time to freak out, my hair will be on fire and I'll be freaking out. So what else am I watching this week? Well, the Bank of England keeps rates unchanged. And why am I bringing this up? Why do we even care about it? Well, because if you remember from the other week, that Canadian Central Bank cut its interest rates 1/4 point. So if you have some governments raising rates and other governments lowering rates, we're going to have currency fluctuations and maybe even currency crises. And when that happens, crazy things could happen in the financial markets. We'll just have to watch and wait and see and be prepared to see what the market is telling us. And with all this said, what happens next and what am I doing about it? Well, I always like to go to the data and let the data tell me what I should be doing. And this is a very important piece of data that came out 3 days ago. The advanced monthly sales for retail and food services. Well, guess what? They're kind of flat. And why do I consider this good news? Well, I consider this good news because, well, it's not way down. And if it's not way down and it's flat, that means people are continuing to buy stuff. And you know what? If you're buying stuff, when you spend your money, that money being spent is someone else's income, and the economy continues on. So this is just me watching the market, and the market is telling me, well, the economy's humming along and there's nothing to worry about. One of the other trends that I always like to bring up is the gold trend, because a few years ago, when everyone hated it, I was investing in gold and gold miners, and here's another signal that this trend is intact. Well, Thailand joins China in driving the gold bull market. At least that's what the news says. And what's really only important about what this is telling me is what do I think everyone else is doing? And if everyone else thinks it's going to go higher, eventually it's going to go higher. Because this is the one thing that I learned from a very successful hedge fund manager. You can't trade on what you think. You have to trade on what you think other people think, because that essentially is the market. So let me continue along on what else is very interesting this week. Well, this is something I'm watching closely because headlines like this will cause me to panic when one thing happens, and I'll tell you about that at the end of the video. But what is that one thing? Well, we're going to look at the charts for that, but before I get to it, for the first time since the financial crisis, the CMBS investors face Europe's first AAA loss. And what do I mean by this AAA loss? Well, the bonds that are rated the best, the AAA bonds, when they start collapsing, when they start losing money or whatever's happening here, I didn't go into the very nitty-gritty specifics because it doesn't matter yet. All it matters is this a one-off or is this a start of a trend? And when the best things out there start to produce losses, it's going to be a problem. And that's why this is one of the most insightful articles that I saw all week. Of course, it's not time to panic yet, but Wall Street wants you to panic. This article titled, "The Music Just Stopped, Japan Banking Giant Norchikuchin," I don't know how to pronounce that, Norinchukin, to liquidate $63 billion in treasuries and European bonds to plug massive unrealized losses. And inside the article, they just say they want to sell this and diversify so that they're not so exposed to government interest rates. This is exactly what I talked about before with the Bank of Canada doing one thing and back over here on this tab, the Bank of England doing something completely different. And if the US is doing something different, then different portions are going to have different losses inside the bank. What's my point here? My point here is that I don't need to know the specifics. All I need to know is that if one bank starts selling U.S. Treasuries and then another bank starts selling U.S. Treasuries, there could be a problem in the bond market. I'm not saying there is a problem. I'm just saying there could be a problem. In this, I would pay high attention to. Why? Well, because if the bond market starts to have trouble, then there are lots of things that could have trouble. In this, I'm just watching very closely. But in the meantime, I'm not worried because the trend is still intact, and this is what this show is all about. It's watching the market to let the market tell me if I should do something or not. And what is it telling me? Well, the CBO figures out the math and raises the 2024 U.S. budget deficit by $400 billion to $1.9 trillion. So what does this mean? Well, look at the graph there. So the federal government revenue and spending is a 6-month average graph. So everything's up and to the right. It's going up. And if you look back here, back during the last recession, the spending went up and the revenue went down. And right now, the spending's going up and the revenue's flat. So as the government continues to spend more money into the economy and the revenue's steady, I'm not worried. All of these things, I'm not worried. The market is telling me just to watch the trends and continue investing in things that are going to take advantage of the trends. So what do I want to wrap this up with? I want to wrap this up with a signal that I'm watching. With all this worry and all this potential panic, as long as the market is going up and the data is telling me good things, it's not time to panic. Tomorrow, could I panic? Of course. And that's why you got to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and stay tuned to see what the market is telling me. Well, if we look at the overall market, the S&P is in an uptrend. It's continuing its uptrend. And until it's in a downtrend and until the data is telling me to freak out, it's time for me to be long. Bitcoin is near its all-time highs. Now, of course, maybe it's down 10% from its all-time highs, roughly, give or take a few $1,000s. But that's not concerning to me because it's not dropping dramatically. It seems to be holding. And as the data indicates that the economy is good and that the market is holding, the most important lesson I've ever learned from a money manager is don't fight the market. And what is the market telling me very specifically? Well, I like to watch NVIDIA because guess what? NVIDIA is in its uptrend. And if there's the trend of continuing earnings and continuing earnings growth like everything's showing me, I'm not worried. Until then, I'm bullish. Now, of course, I could change my mind tomorrow, but you'll have to stay tuned to the next weekly edition. And I'll let the market tell me what to do. So hit that like button, subscribe to this channel. I hope you've got a lot out of it. Don't let the market take advantage of you. It's time to take advantage of the market. And you're going to do that by watching the market and letting it tell you what to do. How am I using this information to protect and grow my wealth? Go to highreturnlowrisk.com.